Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video.
Brilliant, just brilliant.
This week, the West Coast action heats up when the Rams meet the Seahawks in a huge divisional showdown. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. And don't miss the Broncos and Chiefs on Christmas night. It's Thursday Night Football, only on Prime Video. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Welcome to the Dr. Raj podcast with Dr. Raj Dasgupta, a show all about educating patients, students, and aspiring doctors about better patient care. Dr. Raj is a quadruple board-certified physician and associate professor at the University of Southern California. He was a co-host of the TNT series Chasing the Cure with Ann Curry, as well as a regular on the TV show The Doctors. And now, here's our show.
Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Raj podcast. And what is this a podcast of? A podcast of happiness and wellness, great stories, totally awesome people. And today, what am I feeling? What I want to talk about is the importance of language. And many of us actually take it for granted. And for those who don't know, my son, his name is Aiden, he has autism and it's pretty bad. And one of the hardest parts of his day is always going to be communicating to others, communicating his own needs. I'm sure he is even more frustrated than me, the dad. And, one of the peeps that comes over to help out my son all the time is a speech language pathologist. And, I didn't really know what that was. And as, I see her working with my son, she is so patient and nice. And I got kind of into what she does. And really what motivated me to get her on this podcast was something called augmentative and alternative communication. And the reason why I'm saying that, if you ever see my son walking around, he carries this iPad not to watch like Zootopia and sing. He actually presses these buttons and they talk and everyone's clapping when he does it. And I'm like, wait a minute, we got to put this on the podcast, So today, my guest is my son's speech language pathologist. It's Rebekah Taylor. And before I introduce her, I got to read her resume, her CV. So Rebekah Taylor is a licensed speech language pathologist specializing in early intervention and complex communication needs. Rebekah has enjoyed a rather diverse career background from a child care center to the anatomic pathology department at Children's Hospital of LA. She draws upon every experience that has led her to this profession. Throughout her work, Rebekah has developed a passion for supporting children and their families through what can sometimes be very emotional and frustrating experiences. She has completed leadership education in neurodevelopmental disabilities with USC and has worked in a variety of settings, including an interdisciplinary clinic, private practice, and schools in the U.S., as well as schools and clinics within the National Health Service in the U.K. In addition to her role as an SLP, she is an augmentative and alternative communication specialist with experience using a variety of communication apps and equipment, performing private and school-based assessments, and providing training for parents, educators, and fellow SLPs. Rebekah is currently concentrating on her private practice and providing in-home, individualized, child-centered communication therapy for children with complex needs or significant communication delays. As communication is a dynamic process and can be influenced by many aspects of a child's development, emotional and sensory regulation, problem-solving, behavior, and social interactions, gross and fine motor development, family and community roles, she strives to incorporate these areas in each therapy session, which I can vouch for. And with that being said, Rebekah, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, dude, it's a treat.
Quite the introduction. I feel a bit overwhelmed now.
Well, I know. I mean, that's why, I don't do the video part of this because I think you're blushing a little bit.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. I'm just...
So, hey, I want to start off with definitions before we go into the meat of everything. So, I'm just throwing out the letters SLP. I did define it speech language pathologist, but what is your job? What do you do? Can you explain it to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this comes up all the time. So every time I've had a conversation with someone, just meeting someone new, oh, what do you do? I'm a speech therapist. Oh, so you work with speech sounds. You help kids with S's and R's, or, oh, you work with children with autism. Oh, you work with people who stutter. And really, speech therapists do all of those things. So it's really tricky to kind of figure out what does that one person do. But I think it's important to know that there are so many different speech therapists. We all do different things. There are speech sounds. It can be somewhat simple. I don't want to say S's are simple, but they could be simple compared to like childhood apraxia of speech or dysarthria. Some people work solely with fluency and stuttering. Some people work with voice, so vocal nodules, or maybe adults who have had laryngeal cancer. Genetic and congenital disorders, obviously, we know about cerebral palsy and Down syndrome. Speech therapists are involved with them as well. Some therapists work solely on feeding and swallowing. And that's not, I enjoy it, but that's not my specialty, right? So, and some people work with adults, some people work with children. I am focused with children, primarily young children, or as we'll talk about, I think a little bit more about, I work with the kids that really have difficulty communicating traditionally how we expect children to communicate. So I work with those with the complex needs and kind of their families.
No, totally. And, before I ask my next question, I did work with this speech language pathologist. I had a nodule on my vocal cords. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember her name, but she worked at USC and she was so amazing. And she, every time I want to, kind of do my voice routine before I give a lecture, she makes me do this thing where I go, ooh, all the time. So I always think about how great you folks are, and she's amazing. But back to you. My question is, we chatted a little bit when you come over, and I know you did some medical illustration. I didn't think that your undergrad was geared towards speech pathology. How did you end up doing what you do with all that other stuff in your background? How did you pick this?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting, or at least it's different than most people, because I think a lot of times you hear about a speech therapist in school, I don't know, maybe other people have heard about it when they're choosing their profession, but I hadn't. And I actually started, my undergrad degree is in medical illustration, which is basically half pre-med, half art. So, totally makes sense. But all those textbooks that you would read and study from, that would be what I would do. And I really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed the medical side of things. I didn't feel like I was very creative. I could do it, but I just liked the medical side of things. So I ended up moving out to LA and got a job at CHLA, but in anatomic pathology. So I was working in a lab, and I enjoyed that too. And I was thinking, okay, so now I need to make a decision. Do I go to med school? Do I, go to nursing school? What do I want to do? So I was actually it was so helpful to be at CHLA and have the support of everyone in the department and everyone in the hospital, really, because I got to know a lot of different departments, and I just started visiting different departments and say, oh, do I like what you're doing? Do I like what you're doing? And I got stuck in speech and hearing department, and they were super helpful. They allowed me to just follow them around all the time. And I just got stuck and thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to work with children. It's that balance of the medical side of things, really kind of digging deep and learning more about neurology and biology and anatomy and how all these things, physiology, how they all work together. But I get to play. I get to play with children all day. And, it's quite daunting, CHLA, you see all the really rare things, the really rare cases. And I think that can be really just emotionally draining. And so just having that other balance of, hey, I get to play. I get to, let's play with Play-Doh today. And I don't have to think about, those really, really stressful things that just I find emotionally draining.
So let me ask you a self-serving question, because, you do your job very well, and either myself or my wife is going to be around. So, what is the role of parents, when we talk about helping my Aiden or helping other kids? What are our jobs, and do I suck as a parent?
You're amazing as a parent. What are you talking about? So it really, the way I work with parents is just to try to understand where they're coming from, meet them where they are, right? So the role of parents for the child, with therapy can really vary, depends on how involved they want to be. But definitely we're encouraging parents to understand what we're doing, because really you see them so much more than I do. I mean, I can only come by the house. I love to spend all day at your house, 7 days a week. It's lovely, but
I'm just saying that because we just renovated. That's why I do.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful too. Yes, I'm definitely staying there now. You sure you don't want me to come more often? But yeah, so just, parents see them all the time. Parents have the inside scoop, right? Like you always know, your child best. So there's a lot of things, not only for a lot of things I depend on. So not just generalizing that therapy over, so that maybe you're working, like we've talked about how to use the device at certain times, or when's a good time, when's a more difficult time, and really feeling like you're understanding how to use it with him, because I can't be there all the time. But also, you're going to tell me, is he having a good day? Is he having a bad day? What's the general gist of today? A lot of times with some of the younger kids I work with, I'm asking parents questions about how they played as a child. So I can try to help, bridge that gap of maybe there's some differences on how they expect the child to play or how they're used to playing. And we can talk about that and kind of bring that together. Excuse me. I if they can be in there directly, that's great. Also, how did sorry.
Dude, I don't care. You can clear your throat 20 times. Take your time, dude.
I'm still getting over that bit. So let me start this again. So there are questions that I'll ask parents to start the engagement. So things like, how did they play as a child, I think is really important.
Okay.
To understand what they're expecting from their own child, but also how to bridge the gap between them playing with their child, how they can, play together. Then also I want to know how they regulate themselves, because a lot of the times that I'm, the kiddos that I'm working with really have emotional or sensory regulation difficulties. Like not everyone, works with children with these kinds of complex needs, but I do. So I want to know, how do the parents regulate themselves? Yeah. Like I know at home, mom's really great. Obviously, she's always just super calm. She can regulate herself really well. But I know that she likes to run. She likes to do other things. And we've talked about that, and kind of that, just me understanding that gives insight into maybe how I can insert some of the therapy techniques into what parents are already doing at home, how they help how they cope with things. Maybe that's something they can teach, because I know Aiden likes to run and walk around a lot too. So that's something they share in, So just all of that really gives insight. But at the very least, I want to know what's going on at home. How are you feeling? I want to meet them where they are. Just always asking, how do you feel this is going? Because I want them to see progress, you want them to see progress too. And if they feel like, oh, I don't get communication, and we hear that a lot, right? I don't get to hear about what they're doing in speech therapy. I don't get to hear about this. That is completely opposite from the way I like to work.
No, and that's why we definitely enjoy having you over.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
I want to talk about, your specialization. So yes, you have this huge speech language pathologist written on you, but I know you do complex communication needs. And can you explain that specialty and how you define it?
Yeah, so it's so complex. So sometimes you think about speech therapy, and we talked a little bit about, there's the speech sounds. I often look at it as kind of an allegory of a tree. So you have the roots, that is the social motivation, there's the attention, there's the trunk of the tree, it might be the receptive language, the branches are expressive language, and then we just, kind of keep going up through the tree, right? Speech sounds are like the leaves of the tree. And then, you've got these kiddos who their system isn't quite growing the same way. Their tree isn't growing the same way as we would expect, right? So maybe they have scattered skills. That could be for a whole range of reasons. Autism definitely falls under. We're learning so much more about autism, but yet there's so much more to know. But someone who maybe has the sensory over-responsivity, the emotional regulation difficulties, but also if you're looking at cerebral palsy, there's motor needs or motor concerns there. I worked with a child who has cerebral palsy and a hearing loss and cortical vision impairment.
Oh, man.
And, just a lot of needs. And with all those needs is a lot of variables. There are a lot of variables there. So I really, really like to kind of dig in there and figure out, okay, we need to look at all of these variables, understand where the child is, and we need help from all the different specialists involved, especially for someone with that kind of complex needs. So just a lot of things going on. It's not, it's an S sound. I hear these patterns. I hear these language, these words need to go together, these combinations. There's a lot of things going on for these kiddos.
So this is going to feel like that question was hard. And I want you to explain to me, the augmentative and alternative communication, which is, kind of Aiden carrying his iPad around. I think people could visualize it, but is AAC really meant for these people with complex communication needs? And just define AAC in general. And how did you get into it?
Yeah, so AAC is really any form of aided or unaided communication support. So It could be picture choices. All speech therapists will use some sort of AAC. So a lot of times I think we think about the high tech, but really there are loads of low tech. The ASL signs that we might use, that's considered AAC. It's unaided. Picture choices, sentence strips, written word choices. A lot of therapists will already incorporate all of these into their therapy every day. But when we're thinking about AAC, when we're talking about it now, we're thinking about the high tech. So we're thinking about iPads with communication apps. There are various communication apps to choose from. This is where it gets really tricky because you have to know, the strengths and weaknesses of the child you're working with and find the right fit for them. But really, it can do so much. And I think sometimes we see it as, oh, they're going to use this instead of communicating verbally. Or, oh, they have 5 words, or they're starting to speak now, so we don't need to use that device anymore. And that's not really what it's there for. There's a range of uses for it. So part of it might be just to kind of get them jump started. It could help with decreasing anxiety. I mean, I've had my own anxiety issues and insomnia, and I've found, when I've had these big moments of anxiety with it lasting for days or weeks, and you have insomnia. And I think you just did a podcast on sleep and the brain, right? So it's amazing because that's exactly how I felt. I couldn't get my words out. I was so frustrated and depressed myself. And I know that what I was experiencing was just a tiny fraction of what the kids I work with experience every day. So something like this, a device like this, can just help them in those moments. So maybe I've had kiddos who were verbal most of the time, but just had really significant anxiety. And when they're in that moment and they can't get their words out, they can always come back to the device. And sometimes it's a word or 2 words just to get that communication out. Sometimes it's a whole paragraph. So it really it's just so much it could help with. And I know that we've talked a lot about auditory processing and just being a model for the child as well. So
I got a question. So
okay.
I really want to go back and when we talk about complex communication needs, I'm just making this up now because I'm getting into the conversation. So is there a strict definition for this that people will say, okay, so like my son, okay, it's not just because he has autism. Is it kind of like is there a scoring system you have, or is it very subjective? How do you get under that he has complex communication needs? Can someone who goes to a air quote normal school have complex communication needs?
Yes. So definitely short answer, yes, absolutely. Lots of kids with complex communication needs can be mainstreamed into mainstream schools, as you were kind of saying. I don't know, there's not really a rubric that I know of that breaks it down, but you're thinking about more than one aspect of your communication is involved.
Okay.
So it's not just that I have a delay in expressive language. It's that with autism, it's already complex. Autism's already complex because you have the sensory needs, there might be feeding, there might be all sorts of things going on. But you're looking at how many systems are involved, really. That's what I'm looking at. So
and does every speech pathologist specialize in complex communication, or is that something that you had to do extra training in?
I would say not every speech therapist does. You definitely do extra continuing education, right? So I've had, you can always pick what your continuing education is in. So yes, I've definitely had more training in not just the leadership program in neurodevelopmental diseases and disorders, but lots of lots of extra training in autism specifically and sensory integration. And, I like to also incorporate things that I know. If we know, for instance, about the sensory responsivity and this baseline of anxiety, then things like mindfulness and diaphragmatic breathing, like I've gone and learned about that, and it's not just those. It's not just continuing education of, quote, complex communication needs. You have to think about, well, what else is involved? So, I've done a little bit of work in CBI and just understanding how all of these systems work together to bring it together and choose the right kind of program for them.
No, and when we'd say AAC nowadays in the year 2024, is that getting more niched towards, kids with autism and more of the higher tech technology? Like you said, if you come in and start, showing flashcards, do we still use that terminology? Oh, he or she using AAC, or is now AAC kind of more niched with higher technology and autistic kids?
Yeah, I don't think anyone really, unless you've learned about AAC, unless you've actually taken a course on it, I don't think anyone actually talks about AAC being those cards, being the picture cards or the photographs choices or anything like that. I think most of the time they hear AAC, they think it's very overwhelming for a lot of speech therapists. So a lot of what I've been doing in the more recent years is actually working with other speech therapists to help them not be so overwhelmed with this high tech. I learned more about Apple and Apple products than I ever wanted to. I don't want to know anymore. I know so much about technology. It's annoying. So yeah, I think definitely now AAC has become just equivalent to high tech. We hear AAC and we think immediately a device.
So how did you, when you saw Aiden, who's moderate to severe, has a lot of communication problems, how did you go, you know what? He has an iPad and there's all these little pictures of cars and meals, and he actually does pronouns and all these. How did you know that would be the move for Aiden and the move for other people that you see? I mean, how do you integrate that? And is that one of your go-to AAC devices or weapons you use to help out with language?
Yeah, like the program.
Yeah.
So there are definitely different programs.
Yeah.
I won't name them, but
You're not getting paid for it, and I'm not paying you, so you don't have to name anything.
There are a number of programs out there. Yeah, thanks. There are a number of programs out there, and so you're looking at different things. When I'm doing an assessment, I'm looking at different things. So the very basic is, can they interact with the touch screen? We have to know if they can actually interact with the touchscreen. Do they understand how that works? Then how small of an icon or how small of a target can they hit? What is the visual field going to look like? Sometimes, they might be able to hit a very small target, but it's too visually overwhelming to have all 80 or 60 icons on a screen at once. It's too much. It's too much for me learning. I wouldn't put that on anyone else. So it's really, there's some background knowledge to know about the different programs, definitely. So one program is lovely. I love the program. I really do. I never use it for kids because it was originally made for adults who had an acquired TBI. So like maybe they have a TBI and they had already acquired language.
For the listeners, that's traumatic brain injury. Just so everyone knows what you're talking about. You're more doctor than me, man. Your acronyms. All right, keep on going.
TBI, CP. So that particular program was actually made for an adult who had already acquired language. They already had language, and then they lost it because of a TBI, a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, a stroke, whatever. So the way those icons are actually arranged, coming from a linguistic standpoint, they're already arranged in a way that makes sense to someone who has the foundations of language already.
Okay.
So the program that we are using at home is not like that at all. It's not entirely arranged in the same way. There are some similarities, but they're not really grouped in these categories like that other program. It's more about the motor planning. So it doesn't really matter. He hasn't acquired anything quite yet. We don't know that he's really categorizing things in that way, in that adult linguistic way. So this is looking at motor plans where as soon as he figures out where one button is, and this is a good example for you because I know that you know this, but for instance, goldfish is actually underwater creatures, water animals in this program. But he also uses that word to request goldfish, right? To eat the goldfish crackers. So, but he has learned this so quickly, right? I mean, you've seen him use this at home. But that's the same thing that we do with our mouths. So we don't learn to say a word differently because it means something else. It's the context that it's in that makes us understand, right? So if I say goldfish, do you mean the cracker goldfish? Do you mean an actual a stuffed toy goldfish, an actual animal? So you need that context around it, and that's how he's using it. So he only needs to remember that if I hit this spot on the screen and then this spot on the screen, that says goldfish. So now my motor plan for goldfish is that spot and that spot. Does that make sense? I like it. Yeah.
No,
so we're thinking about that.
So can I ask you a spicy question?
Of course.
Of course. So my question is, so for other parents who are using this for their kids or whoever, is AAC taking off mainstream in schools? And when you use it for other parents, are people buying into it? Is this well established that this is going to be the new standard? Or are people kind of like, no, I'm going to my old school book and doing flashcards? So where are we with this? You know what I mean? Is this the new standard of helping kids who have complex needs, communication needs?
I really want it to be. I really want it to be the new standard. I just want to say that. So this is really tricky because I think we are in the last 4 years or so, technology has made so much progress. There's so much coming out with technology. We've been able to change how we're using technology. And I think because we're at this kind of golden age of AAC in a way, in this high-tech world, that people are starting to pay more attention to it. So now we're getting more and more research drawn to it. So there have been some amazing clinicians and researchers who have been working on AAC for years, 20, 30, 50 years. It's been around, really. There used to be massive Dynavoxes that would take up your entire desk. So, those are still around and they've been working so hard, but it's just been a handful of people, really. So now that everyone's kind of more interested in high tech and we have access to these iPads, which are so accessible for many families, or even if they couldn't buy one themselves, they are able to get it through the school district. And it's not this bulky $16,000 device anymore. It's something a little bit more accessible.
Yeah.
And with that comes more research. And with the research, obviously, I say obviously because I use it all the time, but we're seeing the benefits because, the research is there to back it up now. So we feel like, okay, we've got the research. Now we can really push for showing other people that this is going to be a benefit to a lot of kids. And yeah.
So I got more. So let me ask you this, and I know I cut you off, but I was so excited. So I'm understanding you more and more. So are you like, when, we have to get speech involved at any level, whether it's going to be just, regular school or special needs, you don't come in just yet. Are you kind of like, hey, it's time to get in, Rebekah? You know what I mean? Or are you first line when it comes to helping kids out with speech, or only when they starting to develop, like they have complex needs or they're not going through the routine? Do you come in with special tricks in your bag like AAC? Where do you fit in?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So kind of going back to the other question too of how we're using AAC.
Yeah, sure.
I work with under threes through the regional center. I'll do early intervention. And so in that way, they're not coming to me because they have complex needs. They qualify because they are not speaking yet. We don't know why. Maybe it's childhood apraxia of speech. Maybe it's autism. Maybe they just don't know. Maybe they're just delayed. Maybe they're bilingual. That we just don't know what the delay is at that point. But I've used my device with my under threes, with my 2-year-olds, my 1.5-year-olds, and just sometimes we can see that they really take to it. And they think, oh, okay, maybe we're going to need this for a little bit longer. Maybe other things come up. Maybe they do end up getting a diagnosis of autism. So in that way, I'm first in line there. But then there are other times where I've done a lot of work in the school district where other speech therapists have worked with the students for a while and the progress has been slow, or they understand the strengths and weaknesses profile a little bit better. And so they want to go into AAC a little bit more. And then I can kind of jump in and help a little bit more with that. But it's really both. And honestly, if I could encourage every speech therapist to not feel too overwhelmed with AAC, I use it with my under threes all the time. And sometimes we just have it as a model and they don't need, we'll use it for a month or two and they don't need it really to communicate. It's just another technique that we can use. And sometimes, they will use it for a while. So,
well, I'll tell you one thing. If there's a family picture and Aiden's not holding his red iPad, it would be weird. You know what I mean? But let me just, make sure I get a couple more questions. And I know it's getting it. Oh my God. So I can't believe how much we chat. But I want you to give some takeaways to parents because, that's what I am. That's how we met each other. And, maybe kind of focus in. Do you have any tips if they feel their kids got any type of communication problems? Can you give some tips of how to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that the best thing to do is just talk to a speech therapist. There are so many nuances that I feel like, Instagram and Snapchat, all these things are, they're big. I'm terrible. I'm terrible with social media. I'm so sorry, but I am. But there's so much information being put out there. I think that a lot of times there's a lot of judgment that parents put on themselves. And so they try to Google search things or try to look at the, Instagram and try to, get these little tidbits of information. But there are a lot of nuances that get lost in that. And I think the best thing you can do is just talk to any speech therapist. Doesn't have to be me. I'd be happy to talk to you, but it doesn't have to be me. And really you have to find the right speech therapist for you too. So we talked about, the different specialties that speech therapists have. So really don't be afraid to find the right therapist. If you start with a therapist and it may not mesh. I've not meshed with some people. That's okay.
I don't believe it.
That's very kind of you. It's very good. But it might, maybe it's not a specialty thing. Maybe it's just a personality thing. You just have to have the right energy together. You have to be able to pace each other and regulate. So don't be afraid to find the right therapist. Most therapists are very understanding, like, hey, and they might be the first one to say, this isn't working out. We need to talk about something. Maybe I can help you find someone else. And just don't wait. For me, the bottom line is do not wait. If you have any thought, talk to a doctor. Hopefully the doctors listening will also just send it to a therapist. Just send them to a therapist. Most speech therapists will happily talk to you on the phone for 15 minutes or something for free, just to kind of get an idea of what your concerns are and maybe point you in the right direction or make some recommendations, but don't wait. And if it has anything to do with AAC, I wouldn't wait on that either. Like I said, I've worked with 2.5-year-olds with devices, with high-tech devices. And there's so much to use with it, and so many variables there. But I mean, we could speak for 4 hours easily, I think, on all of these things. But just don't wait.
All right. I want to make sure I ask you this question. It's important. So I know that you're focusing on private practice. So I want you to just tell me why at this stage of your career that you think that private practice is something you want to kind of blossom a little bit throughout the name of your company, and tell me what is the most challenging part of owning your own business right now.
Oh my goodness. That was a lot. Okay.
It was kind of a lot, dude.
Okay, let me see if I can get there. I feel like I'm in speech therapy right now. Trying to remember all your questions. Speech therapy, or why I'm in private
Let's
practice
start with
right
this.
now.
What's the name of your company? Say it loud so I can hear it.
The name of my company is Alburnum Speech Therapy. Alburnum, it's such an odd name. I know it's an odd name, but
Why'd you pick it then?
It was one of those things, because, I was talking about the allegory of the tree, right? And Alburnum is actually the Latin word. Of course, it's Latin, but, and Raj, I know you're laughing at me because you know me so well. But it's Latin for the sapwood of the tree, which is the growing part of the tree it transports the water and the sap, and it helps the tree grow, and it eventually becomes the heartwood, the harder center of it. So that, there's a lot of symbolism there for me in using that as the tree. So it's Alburnum Speech Therapy.
Well, now that you described it, now it's like,
Yeah.
So I'm going to help you. So why are you focusing on private practice now?
Yeah, so I've, like you've said earlier, I've done a lot of work in different areas. I actually started in private practice when I first came out of school. And I really I love the connection that you have. I feel like I'm a relationship-based therapist. I really like to get to know my parents, the parents of my children, their families, the children themselves. I really feel like you need that relationship to be able to understand them, to be able to figure out what they're trying to communicate, and just help support everyone in that situation. So private practice really allows me to have that closer connection with the family, with the child and the family, and kind of really understand what they need to survive and thrive in their environment.
So what sucks about owning your own business? What's the hardest part?
Oh my goodness, the bookkeeping is terrible.
Make your husband do it. Why can't he do the bookkeeping?
If I wanted an MBA, I would have gone and done it.
So let me ask you my last question. And so what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? I mean, whether that's going to be next year and 5 years from now, or if you have a big plan you haven't told me yet, what do you want to do?
Oh gosh, you're talking about big goals. I really just focus on helping as many children as possible. I know it sounds kind of, I don't know, sappy, but I think, part of working, I think it's important. I think speech therapy in schools is so important, but I also know that a lot of the speech therapists are overwhelmed with just how many children they're trying to support and get to know. And for someone like me, like I said, I like to be a relationship-based therapist and try to really understand the child and what's going on around them. And if I have 80 kids that I'm on my caseload, I go to bed thinking about 80 children. And I know how that can be for other clinicians as well. And so something with AAC, I think, you just feel so overwhelming when you're just trying to help all your 80 children. And AAC can be really overwhelming. So I think something I really want to focus on is just bridging that gap between the really amazing research coming out and how they can actually use it in schools and create these interventions that are not so overwhelming for the therapist to have to learn. So trying to bridge that gap, be the in-between person that can maybe translate some of that research into something that's really useful and easily done.
Yeah. Hey, do you have a website or like some social media thing you want to just throw out there?
Yeah. alburnhamslp.com. You can spell that ALBURNMUM. I don't even think I spelled it right.
That is so funny. But what we're going to do on the show notes is put your website there. And are you on any social media where they can follow you?
I am not.
Wow.
I know.
I thought you'd be so all over that. You know what I mean? But at least you got the website.
I find it very overwhelming.
But let me say my closing, which is the truth. When I first saw Aiden carry the iPad, I was one of those people like, I don't think this is going to work. I was always frustrated with Aiden. But years later, it's just amazing how it's just like to see you work with him and the patience you have. You're not lying anything you said about yourself and what you want. I see it when you interact with my boy. And you truly are, the bond you made with my wife, with myself. And I'm sure the other people who have spoke so highly about you, because I know that you're well known in the schools that Aiden goes to. So you're amazing. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. That's ridiculously kind. I appreciate it. It is an honor to be part of his team. I love him. Well, I got the best hug the other day. Did you see?
Well, I saw the smile after you gave a hug, and that's why I'm like, you're a good person. You know what I mean? That wasn't one of those fake smiles. It was like, wow. You know what I mean? That's when you put the effort and time in. So, hey, everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed today's Dr. Raj podcast. As you can tell, it's something near to my heart. It's something that's going to help everyone out there. Don't wait to get a speech pathologist involved, and don't be scared to use, neurotechnologies. It obviously changed my son's life, my life. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Dr. Raj podcast, coming to you not too far away.
Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Ars Longa Media. Our producers are Madison Linden and Chris Brightigan. Our executive producer is Dr. Patrick Beeman. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended for medical advice. Ars Longa, Vita Brevis.